Not all heroes wear white robes, and not all victories are sung. Beyond the familiar borders of Middle-earth, in the vast, shadowed lands of the East, two mysterious figures once walked unknown paths. Draped in cloaks of deep-sea blue, these beings were called the Ithran Luin, the Blue Wizards. Their story was almost lost to time, buried beneath greater legends and overshadowed by the fall of Sauron. But who were they really? Did they fall into darkness like Saruman? Or did they forge silent victories far from the eyes of the West? This is their story, the story of two forgotten heroes who fought battles few even knew existed. Around the year 1000 of the Third Age, 5 powerful spirits arrived quietly in Middle-earth. They were the Istari, the wizards sent by the Valar to guide men and elves in the coming struggles against the shadow of Sauron. Clad in bodies of flesh, they bore great wisdom, but were forbidden to dominate or reveal their power openly. Their purpose was to inspire, not to rule. The first to arrive was a tall, noble figure with raven hair and a voice like music, clad in white, Kurumo, later known as Saruman. Others followed, Radagast the Brown, Gandalf the Grey, and 2 cloaked in sea blue. These last were the Blue Wizards, known in the early texts as Alatar and Pallando. They came from the will of Orome, the huntsman of the Valar, who knew the ways of the wild eastern lands better than any other. Alatar was chosen for his strength, and Pallando, his closest companion, joined him by friendship and request. Together, they vanished into the east, far beyond the reach of elves and men, and then they disappeared from history, while Saruman, Gandalf, and Radagast remained closer to the lands we know: Rohan, Gondor, Rivendell. The Blue Wizards had another calling. They were sent to the east, where shadows still festered from the First Age, and where Sauron's influence, even weakened, found fertile ground. There, in places few of the free peoples had ever seen, the Blue Wizards worked among tribes of men torn apart by fear and superstition. They were tasked with a subtle mission: not to rule, not to fight open wars, but to spread hope quietly, to guide, advise, and unite those who might one day resist the Dark Lord. They were to build resilience in the hearts of men, far from the reach of Western kings and councils. For 1,500 years, there was no word of them. While Sauron rose again in Mordor and the West girded itself for war, the Blue Wizards were still deep in the forgotten East, sowing seeds of resistance, or, as some feared, possibly falling into shadow themselves. For centuries, rumor and fear grew around the Blue Wizards. Had they failed? Had they succumbed to Sauron's dark promises, as Saruman eventually would? In the unfinished tales, Tolkien hints at their possible corruption. They passed into the east with Saruman, but they never returned. Whether they remained pursuing their purposes, perished, or became ensnared by Sauron is not now known. Middle-earth's wisest feared the worst. After all, the Istari, though mighty, were vulnerable in their mortal forms. They could grow weary. They could be tempted. Their diminished strength made them susceptible to the very evils they were sent to oppose. And yet, small hints suggest another, brighter possibility. When Saruman, in his bitterness, taunted Gandalf at Orthanc, he casually let slip the existence of 5 wizards, not 3, revealing the secret of the Blue Wizards. If they had joined Sauron, would Saruman have so casually exposed them? Would he not have kept their allegiance hidden to use against his enemies? Furthermore, If the blue wizards had truly fallen, why did Saruman not flee eastward after his downfall to rally with them? Instead, he clung to his broken power in the west, alone. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Perhaps the blue wizards had not failed after all. Perhaps their story was one of hidden victories, not of defeat. Late in his life, Tolkien himself reconsidered the fate of the blue wizards. In notes and letters written near the end of his life, he reimagined their story entirely. Instead of arriving during the Third Age, the blue wizards, now named Morinitar, Darkness Slayer, and Romestamo, East Helper, came during the Second Age alongside Glorfindel at the height of Sauron's original rise to power. Their mission was bold: to move far into the lands dominated by Sauron, to seek out his strongholds, and to sow dissent among his followers. Their purpose was not to defeat Sauron directly, but to fracture his armies from within, to weaken the Dark Lord's grip on the East, and prevent a united force that could have crushed the West utterly. According to this later vision, the blue wizards succeeded in their hidden war. Through secret alliances, the founding of underground resistance, and even the creation of small cults and traditions opposed to darkness, they delayed and fractured Sauron's dominion. Without their subtle sabotage, Sauron's armies, bolstered by the full strength of the East, might have overwhelmed Gondor and the elves long before the events of the War of the Ring. In this light, Morinitar and Romestamo were unsung heroes, the secret architects of Middle-earth's survival. Victory, however, came at a great cost. The blue wizards, by necessity, lived as wanderers and strangers. They became part of the lands they sought to heal, leaving behind the West, forsaking the chance to return to the undying lands. They bore the weariness and confusion that mortal forms impose on immortal spirits. In the hidden places of the world, they fought battles no songs recall, and when their task was done, they remained in the East, forever cut off from their brethren. Tolkien hinted that they founded secret orders, small groups dedicated to resisting darkness even after Sauron's fall. These groups, these ideas, survived, planting seeds of hope that would outlast even the Dark Lord's passing. In contrast to Saruman's arrogance and Radagast's retreat into nature, the blue wizards fulfilled their mission. They were not corrupted by power. They did not seek domination. They fought the long, slow battle, and though they are not named among the great heroes of the West, their legacy lives on, woven into the very survival of the free peoples. In the end, the story of the blue wizards reminds us of a profound truth. Not all victories are won on grand battlefields. Some are won in quiet moments, in forgotten lands, by those who labor in obscurity for a hope they may never see fulfilled. The blue wizards, Alatar and Pallando, or Morinitar and Romestamo, walked paths few others dared to tread. They fought not for glory, but for the good of those who would never even know their names. Their mission was not to command, but to inspire, not to conquer, but to heal. Middle-earth owes them a debt it will never be able to repay. And so, when you hear tales of the mighty elves, the proud kings of men, and the steadfast hobbits who bore the weight of the world, remember also the cloaked figures who wandered the forgotten East, the unseen warriors who, without sword or crown, held back the tide of darkness and made all the victories of the West possible. The blue wizards were not lost. They were exactly where they were needed most.